Alright, so we're gonna go over the VSTs and the plugins that I use in order to make this very ambient and melodic Gunna inspired sample, right? And also cover some gems on processing tips and things of that nature that you can probably follow in order to achieve these type of sounds, right? So let's get into it. All right, so let's talk about this pad here first. I usually like going with a pad in order to set the ambience that I want everything to sit in. So I found this pad from Analog Lab. It's called Unexplored Terrain, and I laid down these chords real quick. All right, so at this point I got something to work with. I'm like, all right, well, now let's figure out what piano, what key can I use in order to like establish more of a rhythm. So I found this pure lo-fi preset, and let me go ahead and show you what that was. And it's called A Forest of Tiny Things. The names of these presets, bruh. The keys have that ambient melodic type of process piano feel without me having to do anything else. So at that point it's like, all right, well, we can move forward to probably getting a bass in, right? So that's very key, is again the pockets of space that everything's playing in, and also what sounds you're picking. I also recommend, if you're going to go this route and try to make these type of samples, to go with a live piano VST and do your processing after that in order to get that type of feel, right? The melody, or the top end melody, whatever you want to call it, is from Augmented Voices, and the preset is called Tape and Love. I love these preset names, bruh. Anyway, so I'll go ahead and play the full actual sound. Go back here, boom, boom. All right, so at this point I'm like, okay, well, the Augmented Voices is fitting the vibe a little bit. It may be straying away from it, but I kind of wanted to push the boundary a little bit and like do something kind of different. So that's cool, but what's more important is how it feels in the pockets of space that I left from the chords that I actually initially laid down. So at this point I can still get like some type of rhythm going. I'm like, all right, well, it's time to go into the bass guitar, right? The bass guitar is coming from a contact bank called Session Basses Prime Bass, and as you can see here, it allows for full-on control and expression of how the bass guitar is being played, which I'll get into that in a second. But let me go ahead and play the actual pattern. All right, so I'm not the best at using a VST for a guitar, but I do know when it comes to a bass guitar, you want to follow primarily the root notes of the chord that is the foundation of the sample, right? And also, it's all about how the bass guitar is being played. If you think about an actual bass guitar player, it's the pickup sound that's audible. It's the moving of the hands going up and down the fretboard that's audible. It's how the actual guitar is being held when you're either strumming with your fingers or with a pluck or a pick, right? And all of that is very important. So that's why I pointed out the fact that the VST allowed for full expression. And I'm just saying this for me, for future reference, that I want to actually focus on that in the future to make sure that you get something as very close, as authentic as possible. I did play around with the velocity. That's very important. But also what's important is the pockets of space, the rhythm, the groove, and the actual swing and timing of when you're strumming and playing the bass guitar. You want this to sound as live as possible. So I try my best to go for that at my current skill level, but in the future, I think I want to actually try to click around with the VST and try to get more expression out of it. So with that being said, let's go on and move on to the final sound, I think in the, oh wait, no, okay, we're gonna move on to the chorus. Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to the chorus. All right, so at this point, I'm like, yeah, I like the augmented voices that I used initially, but I want something a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more stable to be the top melody. So I swapped that out for these this kind of bell or key type of sound that I found in the Freak 2. So let me go ahead and show y'all what that was. So here's the sound. Right? Real simple. Real simple. So at this point, we got pretty much the primary elements that I wanted to work with. Okay, so for the augmented strings, we have this preset called Cathedral Sized. And the pattern again is real simple. I decided to have the augmented strings play as a counter melody essentially. So real simple, I'm gonna go ahead and play the pattern. All right, so Gunna likes his live instruments, bro. Like if you listen to the last couple of tapes that he dropped, or albums that he dropped, you can hear the live instruments. You can hear how it sets the tone and energy for the sample itself. But I wanted something slightly different. That's why I went with the augmented strings instead of the like a live VST bank coming from Contact, right? Usually Contact has pretty good VST banks for live instruments. So I went with that instead. All right, so now we're gonna cover the last two sounds in the bridge. And at this point, the rest of the sample is the same elements, but with like a slight variation in the pattern, or something's reversed or anything along those lines, right? So let's go ahead and get into it. I'm gonna actually play the bridge because essentially is where the switch up happens, right? Right, so those two elements is this pattern 8 right here and pattern 7, which I did use pattern 8 previously in the hook, but we'll talk about it right here. So let's go ahead and get into that. Okay, so that bass is coming from the Freak 2 and the preset's called Backstab Poly Bass, and it's essentially following the root notes of the progression, but it has so much movement in it, right? Yeah, I just liked how that vibe just like set the whole premise of the switch up, and it's completely different from the pattern that it was originally, right? Like it just had more space. So did that switch up on that. The bass guitar is essentially the same. I added that extra little bounce right there. You know what I mean? But it's essentially the same pattern, and then reverse the perk loop. But for the final sound, that is also coming from the Freak, and it is called Driven Bass. I kind of use this bass as like an accent stab. So let me go ahead and play the pattern. All right, so I'm gonna quickly go over the mix bus real quick, and essentially I just wanted to try to go for something that felt warm, felt very vintage, and carried that vibe forward, right? So let me go ahead and get into it. So off rip, when I'm trying to achieve the type of sound that this sample is geared towards, I'm running it through some type of tape saturation, and I decided to go with Alkane. It has a color wheel. Like, what more do you want? A color wheel or color knob it's sauce. It's just going to add the right amount of harmonics and tape saturation that you want. And also you can actually EQ and filter out how you want the saturation to play within the mix. And then you even have more control over how much color is being applied to the low end and how much is being applied to the high end. So it's characterized as having more thud and more shine, right? This is sauce. I'm trying to tell you it's sauce. So I use that for tape saturation. And I also, in order to get that vintage feel, like to try to run things through a emulator for like a console or a console bus, right? So I use NLS right now. I want to upgrade this at some point, but right now NLS does me justice and it gives me that type of finished sound that I want for these type of samples. And that's pretty much it. That's the extra sauce right there. Use tape saturation, use a console strip or console bus emulation, and then you're pretty much good to go. There's other aspects to the sample, but yeah, you know what I'm saying, I ain't really want to focus on the sample. I wanted to give y'all the VSTs and the plugins, bro. Like that's the important part right there, the VSTs and the plugins. Other than that, man, that's pretty much it. All right, so I went over the VSTs and the plugins that I use in order to make this sample, and I also discussed how you can add a little finished polish and touch to your actual sample and get that vintage warm feel, man. So I also think, you know what I'm saying, if y'all don't hear Gunna on this, who do you hear on this? If you can hear any other artist, man, let me know, man. I'm curious to see what y'all think, man. I personally think Gunna might, you know what I'm saying, he might be like, he might pass on that thing. I don't know, I got more work to do. But I think you can hear the influence, you can hear what I was going for, and that's the important part on this journey as I'm trying to get better at producing. In the next one, we're gonna go over the beat itself. And yeah, man, that's pretty much it, man.